Helen Atwan's interview shows us the big picture thinking and strategic planning that moves a 166-year-old press into the 21st century. Her journey is professional yet personal. Her leadership is passionate yet relevant. She connects deeply to the historic mission of Beacon and keeps shining a light on the voices who span the bridge of history. She has an unwavering commitment to Beacon's mission as she leads the press into the future. Beacon Press is rooted in her footsteps. Helen Atwan's journey to publishing and life in the United States came with the revelation that following your passion, celebrating your authenticity, acknowledging your curiosity, listening to others, and believing in your voice would set the path to success and fulfillment. Atwan began her journey with curiosity as she crossed the ocean from her birthplace, France, with her parents for a visit to the United States. After several visits, she and her parents would move to the United States. At a very early age, she began to learn about a new culture through her own eyes, ears, heart, and words. Her life in the United States came with glimpses of a world in transition, including civil rights, women's rights, poverty, and politics, evident during the 1960s and 70s. "We came here when I was a small child. I was 6, Atwan said. We spent some time going back and forth to France and then settled basically in America when I was 9. After that, I lived here and there in the United States and eventually became an American citizen in 1976. She received her BA from the University of South Carolina, summa cum laude, with Phi Beta Kappa honors. She went on to receive her MA in English Literature at the University of Virginia. After finishing her studies at the University of Virginia, she entered a PhD program, but later decided that it wasn't for her. She thought book publishing seemed like a good option, so she ventured to New York. She spent her publishing career in 1976 at Random House in New York as an assistant editor in their college division, before moving to Alfred Knopf in 1977 as a publicity associate. She then joined the Viking Press in 1979 as the associate director of publicity. In 1981, she moved to Farrar, Straus, Giroux, where she began as the director of publicity. She also became a vice president of the House in 1987 and the associate publisher in 1991. In 1993, she joined the Pocketbooks division of Simon & Schuster as vice president and director of marketing. She held many roles, preparing her for the next steps that she would take. Helen Atwan had many great experiences in the publishing world. She said, "I was very lucky to work at really great publishing houses. I got to meet a lot of writers and I got to be deeply involved in the culture of books and writing, and I just loved it. The thing I didn't get was the joy of working in nonprofits on social justice issues." Atwan heard about the job at Beacon Press and pursued it. She wanted the opportunity to lead this historic press because she understood its mission, where it began, and where it could go. Atwan rooted her vision of success for Beacon with reverence for its founding in 1854 by the American Unitarian Association. This liberal religious movement had the enlightened notion to publish and distribute books and tracts that would spread the word of their beliefs, not only about theology, but about society and justice. Atwan's visionary leadership began as she embraced the legacy of Beacon's history in the Universalist tradition in Beacon Press's original home at 41 Vernon Street in Beacon Hill. Her leadership was grounded by the history beneath her feet. The Beacon Hill property, lined with cobblestones and set in the shadow of the Massachusetts State House, carried the mission of the press to Atwan through the stories of the narrow streets and back roads. The narrow cobblestone streets of Beacon Hill was home to the largest concentration of black and white abolitionists, black intelligentsia, and underground railroad stations than anywhere else in America during the 1800s. Atwan's vision of Beacon was rooted in knowing that she would never leave these neighbors behind. She would look out her window and can see the community where it all began. In 2014, atwan moved with Beacon to its high-tech offices in a refurbished former factory at 24 Farnsworth Street on Boston's waterfront. For atwan, this was a symbolic bridge that moved Beacon from its roots to its new relevance, never forgetting its original location, but building on Boston's symbolic waterfront. As a publisher, atwan is responsible for project acquisitions, the organization's operations, including overseeing all of the departments within the company, as well as the editorial and production departments. She has total faith in her team as extremely competent, talented, and mission-focused people, especially as they propose acquisitions, plan to get manuscripts to the finished book status, editing the work to mastermind its full potential, and marketing the finished product for maximum sales. atwan really moved the press from some of the traditional books to a whole range of new works that also have identified the press. atwan established a goal of adding more literature, fiction, and literary memoir to the Beacon list, with books that reinforce the mission of the press. In addition, she made a deliberate effort to ensure that excellence and importance in content, the hallmark of Beacon Press books for a century and a half, was balanced with excellence in writing. Today, a glance at Beacon's catalog shows how the press has continued to build on its strength of the past, and also plans are made for building into the future. As another groundbreaking strategy, atwan also focused on ebooks and audiobooks. The look to the future technology in publishing was atwan's focus. She said that her pursuit of the ebook market with deep interest was really important to her. She says, "When I arrived at Beacon, there were no such thing as ebooks. By 1999, we started doing ebooks. Now the problem was that was no platform. There was no platform for ebooks. You could make ebooks, but nobody was buying ebooks. Nobody really had done so thus far. So it wasn't until the Kindle that people really started discovering and reading ebooks. So we were at least 5 years, 6 years ahead of the curve on that. But what was great about it is that we were prepared, that we had figured out how to make ebooks." Also, atwan pursued audiobooks. In an article, atwan confesses her addiction to audiobooks and admits to being an audiophile. "I feel very passionate about audiobooks, in part because they make books accessible to people who have certain disabilities that don't allow them to actually consume books on paper or printed and on screen," said atwan. "And in part because they added a dimension to the book, which is voice. It's either the author's voice or a professional actor, and actually in many cases the professional actor will be the author's preference, and the listener whose preference, but to add that dimension, and also to make that book that much more available and that much more accessible, so people can listen to books who cannot find the time to sit down in a comfortable sofa and read them on paper." Audiobooks and ebooks is very much her passion, and she has built that emphasis, and it's documented on the web. The next strategy for atwan that she really is excited about is engaging the young adult market. She said this is one of the major trends and the changes of the press. And she's very proud of overseeing it, and she shares that many on her team are driving it. But she feels like this is the future, that we must bring young adult titles to the forefront and engage new audiences in new ways. atwan has made a priority of documenting inclusive history. This is a value, it's part of the mission, and she feels so connected to it and values it. In one of the taglines, we don't need patriotic histories, we need more radical histories. And you can see from the range of titles, whether it's Indigenous people, queer history, African American Latinx history, Black women's history, and more. Atwan is making and documenting, and together with her team, the new narrative of inclusive history. Atwan looks into the future as a bridge builder who's bridging the span of history for all ages to appreciate. She is looking to the future when she illuminates the voices through books that speak to many communities. She's also very thankful of her team, and she says she's looking forward to growing and developing with the wonderful minds that engages with her on a daily basis. She says, "This is a village, and I'm just awed by the strength of our team. I've been focusing on the authors that I'm working with, but I have a brilliant editorial staff specifically that is doing great work with so many wonderful authors." And as you can see from some of the photos, she's met many people over time. She's had many relationships with different authors. She even referenced a few authors that she met with, and she shared time with their families and children and learned, their personal approaches. She's worked with some of the top authors in many different settings, from poetry to literature. And at the end of the day, she is still rooted in the mission and energized by a staff that makes all things possible.